it's tough getting that big ship out of harbor, isn't it? And Trish, if you will turn off the doorbell as well, please. And Shayna, are you ready to go, my friend?
I'm ready. Good evening. Please be aware that the first hour and a half of this meeting will be recorded so that we can put it onto our website and podcast. We record in audio only. Please feel free to use the podcast on our website along with your big book as a resource if you study the portion of the meeting. If you missed the study portion of the meeting. The study portion is also listed on the website so you can follow along. In accordance
Yeah, go ahead. You're right. Keep going.
In accordance with our group conscience on October 16, 2023, we will also be posting our podcast on YouTube. We feel that this is an effective way to carry our message to those seeking recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Tonight's recap will start on page 8 with Trembling I Stepped from the Hospital, ending on page 10, For I Was Hopeless. And tonight our study portion is going to begin on page 10, ending on page 12, with A New World Came into View. And that's posted in the chat in case anybody forgets. And our other meetings will get posted in the chat as well. Announcements. Good evening, family. My name's Jamie, very grateful, recovered alcoholic, and glad you are all here. Welcome to everyone that is new. Welcome to everyone that is returning. So glad to see you, family. Just a couple of quick things. As you know, I went to fourth quarter assembly here a couple of weeks ago. For those of you who are home group members, GSR report has already been emailed out. Please check your inboxes. Something else that was emailed out is Grapevine is looking for old grapevines to go into institutions, into the prison system. If you have any old grapevines you would like to donate, please send them to the address, same Seventh Tradition address that's being posted in the chat. I will make sure that they get to Area Grapevine so that they can go into the prison system. Even if they have staples in them, I'll get the staples pulled and get them all sewn together. Before I forget, everybody have a happy Thanksgiving, So that being said, we will go ahead and move along.
Good evening, everyone. I'm a recovered alcoholic, and my name is Shayna. Welcome to the Lewisburg Primary Purpose Big Book Study Group. To prepare for our Big Book study, let's get focused by having a 3-minute moment of silent meditation, followed by our family's fog light prayer.
And I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name is Jamie. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to start the meditation in a minute, so please take a minute to get situated.
Please be aware of background noises when you are unmuted and sharing, as not to distract others or yourself. We suggest we all observe proper Zoom etiquette. If you wouldn't do it in a live meeting, please don't do it here. A friendly reminder, absence of profanity offends no one. Please keep yourself muted during someone else's share. We will call on you in the order the hands are raised.
From the foreword to the first edition of Alcoholics Anonymous, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are many thousands of men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book and of this group.
For the meditation, some suggestions are focus your breath and posture. Breathe in God and breathe out self.
Take this time to reconnect with God. Let the craziness of the day drift away and ask God to help you focus on the study. And on that note, as I always like to say, oh, when the monks come marching in, enjoy your time with God, folks. And for those of you who wish, if you'd like to join us in our family's spotlight prayer, it is on your screen in front of you. God, let your love shine through us like a fog, so that those that are lost, sick, and dying can find your love through us. Amen. You're muted, Shana.
I'm so sorry. And can we have Nick for our secretary's report?
Oh, sorry, okay. Hi, my name is Nicole, and I'm your recovered alcoholic secretary. I've asked Marilyn to read the recovered statement. We read this notice to explain why many people in this group identify as recovered rather than recovering, and what it exactly means to be a recovered alcoholic. Take it away, Marilyn.
Hi, my name is Marilyn, and I'm a recovered alcoholic. Recovered, we are not cured of alcoholism. Recovered but not cured. That presents a conflict with some alcoholics. If we were cured, we would be able to drink responsibly. No, we are not cured. The allergic reaction to alcohol will remain with us for a lifetime. But we have been restored to sanity. That was the problem. The main problem in the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body, page 23. We are now sane where alcohol is concerned. Consequently, we have recovered. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you for joining us tonight. We meet every Tuesday starting at 5:30 p.m. Central Time with the Gerbil Fellowship Cage, where we chatter for an hour before the start of the meeting. Feel free to bring side dishes to share with the buzzards. Our Big Book study starts promptly at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, and we ask that you be courteous and ready to begin at the sound of the foghorn. We take our Big Book study seriously. Because of that, this chat will be disabled during the study. In 1940s, when the only elements of sobriety were God, a big book, and one recovered alcoholic working with an untreated alcoholic, the success rate was as follows. From the foreword to the second edition of Alcoholics Anonymous, page XX, of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapse, and the remainder, those who stayed on with AA, showed improvement. Can we have a show of hands of people joining us for the first time? You guys are paying attention. Okay.
Welcome, welcome. We are glad to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Welcome, Elizabeth, and welcome, Francis.
And Howard as well.
Oh, and Howard too.
Thank you. Hi, thank you so much.
Yes, welcome to everyone new here. That's awesome. And those new to AA. And then the recovered alcoholics. These are your potential sponsors. And is anyone celebrating a milestone this week? If you should require a big book of your own, we have large print editions available that can be sent to you by buzzard mail. Delivery time questionable. Please remember to practice our Southern tradition by donating to the group address, Venmo, or PayPal posted in the chat and on the screen. Our suggestion is to purchase a big book and take an untreated alcohol through the program of recovery. Please visit our website posted in the chat. Thank you and see you next week.
Thank you so much, Nicole and Marilyn, for your service, and welcome to everyone. And just one more thing, should you stick with us long enough and decide you like what we have to offer in this group and want to become a home group member, you are more than welcome to. All you have to do is let myself or Trish know, and we'll be happy to add you to the home group membership list. You would be most welcome, and it would give you a voice in this group in the way that we operate. From Chapter 2, there is a solution. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism.
This is an open meeting, and as such, all who have interest in alcoholism and our program of recovery are welcome. Because this is an open meeting, you need not identify yourself, nor your reason for being here if you do not wish to do so. Your anonymity will be protected. We ask that you protect ours.
And I see my birthday girl. Hi, Isla. While this is an open meeting, membership in this group is limited to those who wish to recover from alcoholism and have a desire to stop drinking for good and all. Each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is a potential sponsor of a new member, and should clearly recognize the obligations and duties of such a responsibility.
And before we begin our study of the Big Book, last week we reviewed Tradition 12. Tonight, let's take a look at Traditions 1.
Tradition 1 with Kenny.
Great, good guess. Please refer to page 562 of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I apologize, I don't know who our traditionalist is.
Kenny is coming in for the first time, and welcome, Kenny. And as you can tell, folks, we're a very kid-friendly meeting as well. So welcome, Kenny. Good to have you, brother.
All right, good evening, everyone. Kenny Alcoholic. Tradition 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends on AA unity.
Livy.
The long form of tradition, each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is but a small part of a great whole. AA must continue to live, or most of us will surely die. Hence, our common welfare comes first, but individual welfare follows close afterwards. they talk about unity, and this unity goes in line with our singleness of purpose. You know, we all have the same illness, and we all have the same cure, and that's our singleness of purpose. That we carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers, and this tradition was brought about to keep us focused on doing what we do best and not branching off into other things like other groups before us came, and we learn from their mistakes and shortcomings. Uh, for me, it teaches me to keep my ego in check, that it's not all about me, even though it is. But when I first came in, I didn't understand any of this stuff, and I'm still learning. But I wanted to stop the pain. And then once I understand, in order to stop the pain, I had to do something about the disease. And I did most of this not out of love of anyone. I did this because I didn't want to suffer. And it was pointed out to me that alcoholics are self-centered. And it says in our literature, we must be free of this selfishness or it will kill us. And that's what this tradition helps guards against. It helps guard against the person ego getting carried away and wanting to control things, and thereby putting the group in jeopardy. Because without the group, the chances are, my track record shows that I can't do this alone. I don't know about the next person, but I tried, and I tried and I tried, and I would always go back out and suffer. And I really don't have too much on this tradition, other than that, we need to stay true to it and stay true to all the traditions, so that our AA blood goes on, and we can continue to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. Thank you.
Absolutely excellent. Well done, Kenny. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you for your service tonight. And now it's time for our weekly segment of That Ain't in the Book. We hear a lot of things in meetings, people say in meetings, that can't be reconciled with what the big book actually has to say. So some of the things we hear in meetings, here's one of them, is there are no musts in the book. But our new friend Howard is going to come in and share with us what it has to say on page 95, I think, or 93, whatever page I gave him, in the third paragraph. Welcome, Howard, and thank you for stepping up tonight, my friend.
Thank you. Alcoholic named Howard, glad to be here. My home group's the New Chester group in the Philadelphia area. And the reading from Working with Others is, if he is to find God, the desire must come from within.
Thank you so much. Glad for being a service, and I hope you will come back and join us again and enjoy the rest of the study.
Sorry.
Nope, it's you.
It's me. And as we study, please make use of pens, highlighters, and rulers so that you can share this experience with another alcoholic.
In order for us to stay focused as we study the Big Book, we use the Big Book Study Guide prepared by Joe, Charlie, and Krusty Cliff of the Dallas Primary Purpose Group.
Tonight we're going to start our recap on page 8, which will be read by William?
Yep.
Woo! That was a good guess.
Followed by the guessing game really good tonight.
Thank you.
Followed by our
Alcoholic.
Oh, hang on.
Not yet,
No,
Logan.
not yet. We'll hear you. Followed by our study portion read by
Nancy.
Nancy.
And
That
after
will be on, I'm so sorry.
it'll follow right after William and go into page 12. And all of that's in the chat. After the page is read, we will ask questions from the imaginary podium, starting back at the where Nancy starts reading tonight. And the answers will be one sentence unless otherwise specified. Multi-part questions are simply one sentence answers split up by commas, semicolons, hyphens, and other fun bits of punctuation.
So basically in English, what that means is that we're going to read the material once through and then dissect it, dissect the information a second time through the question and answer format. Notice how the language in the questions gives us a new light in which to consider the study material.
This is important because hearing the question and rereading the content offers a definite way of comprehending the material covered. After we have completed the study, we open up for comment, questions, observations based on what we've read. And if you have had experience and spiritual experience with this information, please, by all means, feel free to share it. Please keep your share on topic. And right around the 5-minute mark, at the 5-minute mark, we'll let you know that your time's up.
However, Big Book study is not therapy. Should you begin sharing on topics which are more appropriately discussed in a different setting, i.e. a sponsor, please do not be offended when we cut that conversation short and send the buzzards nipping at your heels. For that purpose, we have fellowship meetings before and after our study time.
You can never go wrong by commenting on the pages studied, which brings us to the words of one of our co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. Sobriety, freedom from alcohol through the teaching and practice of the 12 steps is the sole purpose of any Alcoholics Anonymous group. And are you taking it or am I taking it, Shana? Okay. And how we got here, folks, we didn't just wake up today and say, well, we're going to start on page 10 of Bill's story. This is a 94-week Big Book study from beginning to end. It's January 7th. This coming January 7th will be 4 years ago that we started it here in my living room with 12 other alcoholics. COVID hit. We eventually became 100% virtual. It has continued and it has grown and it has become a wonderful process. And we go through the entire book line by line with the question and answer format. And the way we look at it is we are continuing the work that Joe and Charlie started in going into that kind of depth. So it seems to be very effective. And it takes us about 8 weeks per chapter to go through all of this. And once we are done with the first 164, we do a few weeks on Dr. Bob's Nightmare. We do a couple of weeks on the traditions as well with the questions format. And then we also visit the spiritual experience all by itself in a standalone meeting with the questions format. And we visit throughout the study itself the spiritual experience 3 times as part of the study as well. Think we have a little emphasis on the importance of the spiritual experience? Maybe. So I hope you will enjoy what we have to offer and come back and learn with us. I believe that we are a group that learns together, and we are glad to have you. Now, Shana's going to throw something else out there real quick, and then we can move on.
Yeah, before we start the recap, we'll need 5 or 6 virtual hands raised if you'd like to be one of our answer readers. Please be aware that the first hour and a half of this meeting will be recorded so that we can put it onto our website. Oh, we got 2, 3, 4, 5. Yo!
Hey, yay, we are in there. And so, William, welcome, brother. Glad to have you tonight, and thank you for stepping up. And let me just make this comment real quick that for those of you who are new, it may seem a little confusing at first, but you will see how the flow of it goes once we start studying. And And if you just follow along in your big books, it will make sense. So thank you. Come on in, William.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do service. My name is William Alcoholic. Trembling, I stepped from the hospital a broken man. Fear sold me up for a bit. Then came that insidious insanity of that first drink. And on the Amnesty Day, 1934, I was off again. Everyone became resigned to the certainty that I would have to be shut up somewhere or would stumble along to a miserable end. How dark it is before dawn. In reality, that was the beginning of my debacle. I was soon to be catapulted into what I would call the fourth dimension of existence. I was no happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredible, more wonderful as time passed. Near the end of that bleak November, I sat drinking in my kitchen with a certain satisfaction that I reflected there was enough gin concealed about the house to carry me through that night and the next day. My wife at work, I wondered whether I dared hide a full bottle of gin near the head of our bed. I would need it before daylight. My music was interrupted by the telephone. The cheery voice of an old school friend asking he might come over. He was sober. It was years since I could remember his coming to New York in that condition. I was amazed. Rumors had it that he had been committed for alcohol insanity. I wonder how he had escaped it. Of course, he would have dinner, and then I could drink openly with him, unmindful of his welfare. I thought of only recapturing the spiritual of the days. That was the time we had chartered an airplane to complete a jag. His coming was an oasis in this dreary desert of brutality. The very thing in OAC Draker are like that. The doctor opened the doctor opened and the door opened the door opened and there he stood he stood there, fresh skinned and glowing, frisky and glowing. There was something about his eyes. He was inexplicable, different. What had happened? I pushed a drink across the table. He refused it. Disappointed but curious, I wondered what had got into the fellow. He was not himself. Come, what all of this about? I queried. He looked straight at me, simple but smilingly. He said, I got religion. I was aghast, so that was it. Last summer, an alcoholic crackpot. Now, suspect a little crack about religion. He had that starry eye look. Yes, the old boy was on fire, right? But bless his heart, let him rant. Besides, my gin would last longer than his preaching. But he did no ranting. In a matter of fact, where he told how two men had appeared in court, persuaded the juries to suspend his commitment. They had told off a simple religion ideal and a practical program of action. That was 2 months ago, and the results were self-evident. It worked. He had come to pass this experience along to me. If I cared to have it, I was shocked, but interested. Certainly, I was interested. I had to be, but I was hopeless.
Thank you so much, William. Thank you for being a service tonight, brother. And we will see you in the questions section. And Nancy, welcome, my friend. Come on in.
Thank you. Nancy Alcoholic. He talked for hours. Childhood memories rose before me. I could almost hear the sound of the preacher's voice as I sat on still Sundays, way over there on the hillside. There was that proffered temperance pledge I never signed. My grandfather's good-natured contempt of some church folk and their doings. His insistence that the Spears really had their music, but his denial of the preacher's right to tell him how he must listen. His fearlessness as he spoke of these things just before he died. These recollections welled up from the past. They made me swallow hard. That wartime day in old Winchester Cathedral came back again. I had always believed in a power greater than myself. I had often pondered these things. I was not an atheist. Few people really are, for that means blind faith in the strange proposition that this universe originated in a cipher and aimlessly rushes nowhere. My intellectual heroes, the chemists, the astronomers, even the evolutionists, suggested vast laws and forces at work. Despite contrary indications, I had little doubts that a mighty purpose and rhythm underlay all. How could there be so much of precise and immutable law and no intelligence? Simply had to be I simply had to believe in a spirit of the universe, who knew neither time nor limitation. But that was as far as I had gone. With ministers and the world's religions, I parted right there. When they talk of a God personal to me, he was love, superhuman strength and direction. I became irritated and my mind snapped shut against such theory. To Christ, I considered the certainty of a great man, not too closely followed by those who claim him. His moral teaching most excellent. For myself, I had adopted those parts which seemed convenient and not too difficult. The rest I disregarded. The wars which had been fought, the burnings and the chicanery that religious dispute had facilitated, made me sick. I honestly doubted whether, or on balance, the religion of mankind had done any good. Judging from what I had seen in Europe and since, the power of God in human affairs was negligible. The brotherhood of man, a grim jest. If there was a devil, he seemed the most universal, and he certainly had me. But my friend sat before me, and he made a point-blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. His human will had failed. Doctors had pronounced him incurable. Society was about to lock him up. Like myself, he had admitted complete defeat. Then he said, in effect, been raised from the dead, suddenly taken from this crap heap to a level of life better than the best he had ever known. Had this power originated in him? Obviously it had not. There had been no more power in him than there was in me at that minute, and this was none at all. That floored me. It began to look as though religious people were right after all. Here was something at work in the human heart, which had done the impossible. My ideas about miracles were drastically revised right then. Never mind the musty past. Here sat a miracle directly across the kitchen table. He shouted great tidings. I saw that my friend was much more than inwardly reorganized. He was on different footing. His roots grasped a new soil. Despite the living example of my friend, there remained in me the vestiges of my old prejudice. The word God still aroused in a certain antipathy. When the thought was expressed that there might be a God personal to me, this feeling was intensified. I didn't like the idea. I could go for such conceptions as creative intelligence, universal mind, or spirit of nature, but I resisted the thought of a czar of the heavens, however loving his sway might be. I have since talked with scores of men who felt the same way. My friend suggested what then seemed a novel idea. He said, "Why don't you choose your own conception of God?" That statement hit me hard. It melted the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadows I had lived and shivered many years. I stood in the sunlight at last. It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. I saw the growth could start from that point, upon a foundation of a complete willingness. I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. Thus was I convinced that God is concerned with us, humans, when we want Him enough. As, at long last, I saw, I felt, I believed. Scales of pride and prejudice fell from my eyes. A new world came into view. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Thank you all for your service tonight. And folks, we are going to go right back to where Nancy began to read, and we are going to go to the questions. Shana will have some comments that she's going to come in with tonight.
I went out again.
For those of you who are new to us, you won't see the questions, but you will see the answers if you're following along in your big book. So the batting order tonight will be William, Nancy, Kenny, Pinky Pickles, and Marilyn related Pickles. So if you could all unmute. William, I am coming to you first, my friend.
Kenny first, right?
Okay. Don't look at the order of hands, okay? Because as you share, your hands are going to drop. So.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
So I wrote down the order. So I'm coming to you first, William.
Gotcha.
Did Ebby have just a few words for Bill?
He talked it for hours.
Thank you. And then Nancy, coming to you. What did Ebby's sharing do to Bill? Read the whole paragraph.
Childhood memories rose before me. I could almost hear the sound of the preacher's voice as I sat on still Sundays, way over there on the hillside. There was that proffered temperance pledge I never signed. My grandfather's good-natured contempt of some church folks and their doings. His insistence that the spheres really had their music, but his denial of the preacher's right to tell him how he must listen. His fearlessness as he spoke of these things just before he died. This recollection welled up from the past. They made me swallow hard.
I have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
Notice the word denial in this paragraph and how it's used. This is the only place this word is used in the basic text. You will, however, find insanity and insidious insanity used several times.
Thank you, Shana. And Kenny, coming to you. Besides Bill's childhood, what else did Ebby's talking remind Bill of?
That wartime day in old Westchester Cathedral came back again.
Thank you very much. And Alyssa, what had Bill always believed? 2 sentences, please.
I had always believed in a power greater than myself. I had often pondered these things.
Thank you. And Marilyn, was Bill an atheist? 3 sentences, please.
I was not an atheist. Few people really are, for that means blind faith in the strange proposition that the universe originated in a cipher and aimlessly rushes nowhere. My, my intellectual heroes, the chemists and the astronomers, even the evolutionists suggested vast laws of forces that work.
Thank you very much. And William, coming back to you, my friend. Despite contrary indications, what did Bill believe?
Despite contrary indication, I had little doubt that a mighty purpose and rhythm analyzed all. How could there be so much?
Right there. Underlie
okay.
all. That's it.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you. Nancy, what did he ask himself?
How could there be so much of precise and immutable law and no intelligence?
Thank you. Kenny, was Bill agnostic? 2 sentences.
I simply had to believe in a spirit of the universe who knew neither time nor limitation, but that was as far as I had gone.
Thank you. And Alyssa, where did Bill draw the line when it came to religions?
With ministers and the world's religions, I parted right there.
Thank you. And Marilyn, what was Bill's attitude when someone wanted to talk God?
When they talked of a God personal to me, who was love, superhuman strength, and direction, I became irritated and my mind snapped shut against such a theory.
Thank you. William, coming back to you, what was Bill's attitude regarding Christ?
The price I conceded, the certainty of great man, not too close to follow by those who claim him.
Thank you very much. Nancy, how did he feel about Christ's teachings?
His moral teaching most excellent.
Thank you. Kenny, was he a follower?
For myself, I had adapted those parts which seemed convenient and not too difficult. The rest I disregarded.
Thank you so much. Alyssa, what made Bill skeptical?
The wars which had been fought, the burnings and the chicanery that religious dispute had facilitated made me sick.
And I have another comment here. Bill was a hard-nosed agnostic.
Thank you. And Marilyn, what was Bill's attitude towards organized religions?
I honestly doubted whether, on balance, the religions of mankind had done any good.
Thank you so much. William, coming back to you, my friend. Judging from what he had seen, Bill believed what?
Judging from what I had seen in Europe and since the power of God in human affair was negligible, the brotherhood of man a grim jest.
Thank you so much. Nancy, who did Bill believe was boss of the universe?
If there was a devil, he seemed the most universal, and he certainly had me.
Thank you. Kenny, what did Ebby declare to Bill?
But my friend sat before me, and he made the point-blank declaration that God has done for him what he could not do for himself.
Thank you so much. Pinky, how well had Ebby's willpower served him?
His human will had failed.
Thank you. And Marilyn, what hope had the doctors given Ebby?
Doctors had pronounced him incurable.
Thank you. And somebody's got something on in the background, radio, TV, or something. William, coming back to you. What was about to happen to him?
Society was about to lock him up.
Thank you. Nancy, what had they both done?
Like myself, he had admitted complete defeat.
Thank you. Kenny, what then happened to him?
Then he had, in effect, been raised from the dead, suddenly taken from a scrap heap to the level of a better, to the level of life better than the best he had ever known.
Thank you. Alyssa, had Ebby accomplished this miracle by his own willpower? 2 sentences, please.
Had this power originated in him? Obviously, it had not.
Thank you. And Marilyn, had Ebby shared the same level of powerlessness that Bill was experiencing?
There had been no more power in him than there was in me at that minute, and that was none at all.
Thank you very much. William, coming back to you, my friend. How did that affect Bill?
That floored me.
Thank you. I can see Bill on the floor. Nancy, what did it begin to look like to Bill? 2 sentences, please.
It began to look as though religious people were right after all. Here was something at work in a human heart which had done the impossible.
Thank you. Kenny, what was happening to Bill's ideas?
My ideas about miracles were drastically revised right then.
Thank you. Alyssa, what did Ebby appear to be? Let me do that again. What did Ebby appear to be to Bill at that moment?
Never mind the musty past. He sat a miracle directly across the kitchen table.
Thank you. And Marilyn, what did that tell Bill?
He shouted, excuse me, he shouted great tidings.
Thank you. William, what did Bill see in Ebby?
I saw my friend was much more than inwardly reorganized.
Thank you.
And I have a comment here. Is Bill having a spiritual experience here?
Thank you so much. Nancy, did Bill see a real difference in Ebby? 2 sentences.
He was on a different footing. His roots grasped a new soil.
Thank you. And Kenny, did seeing this miracle change Bill's idea about God?
Like the living example of my friend, there remained in me the vestige of my old prejudice.
Thank you. And Alyssa, what word did Bill definitely dislike?
The word God still aroused a certain antipathy.
Thank you. Marilyn, how did the idea of a personal God affect Bill? 2 sentences, please.
When the thought was expressed that there might be a God of personal to me, this feeling was intensified. I didn't like that idea.
Thank you. And William, did Bill continue to cling to the agnostic views?
I could go for such a conception of created intelligence, universal mind, a spirit of nature, but I resisted the thought of a check of the heaven, however loving he might be.
Thank you. And Nancy, as time passed, did Bill find others who shared his idea of God?
I have since talked with scores of men who felt the same way.
Thank you. Kenny, when Ebby realized Bill's predicament, what did Ebby suggest to Bill? 2 sentences.
My friend suggested what seemed then like a novel idea. He said, "Why don't you choose your own conception of God?"
Thank you very much. And Alyssa, how did that suggestion hit Bill?
That statement hit me hard.
Thank you. Marilyn, what melted?
It melted the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadow I had lived and shivered many years.
Thank you. William, Bill then stood where?
I stood in the sunlight at last.
Thank you. Nancy, what must we be willing to believe?
It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself.
Thank you. And Kenny, what more is required to make a beginning?
Nothing more was required of me to make a beginning.
Thank you, Alyssa. What does when does spiritual growth begin?
I saw that growth could start from that point.
Very good. Thank you, Marilyn. What is the foundation of success in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous?
Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend.
And I have another comment. Do you believe you have the complete willingness that is required to be successful in this program?
Thank you, Shayna. And William, coming back to you. Did Bill decide he would have it? 2 sentences.
I would have it. Of course, I would.
Thank you. And Nancy, of what was Bill then convinced?
Thus was I convinced that God is concerned with us humans when we want Him enough.
Thank you so much. And Kenny, what was Bill at long last able to do?
At long last, I saw myself. I felt I believed.
Thank you. Alyssa, what fell upon his eye? What fell from his eyes?
The scales of pride and prejudice fell from my eyes.
Thank you. And related pickle, you get the final question of the night. What was he then able to see?
A new world came into view. Thank you.
And
And
Shane, you have a comment.
I have a final comment. Here is where Bill took step 2, as we now understand it.
Thank you so much, folks. Thank you all for your participation in reading. Well done. And the floor is now open for comments, questions, observations, experience, spiritual experience, if you can relate to it. Please go ahead and raise your hands and come on in. It's going to be the dental chair tonight. Shayna, come on in. You and Trish were at a race for the hands, but Shayna, you come on in.
It was funny because I had my hand up and then I was like, oh no, I can't figure out where my virtual hand is. Anyway, Shayna, recovered alcoholic, thank you very much. I really enjoy this part of the reading because I can identify with the agnostic. And it wasn't until I was in here that I heard the definition of agnostic, without knowledge of a God, of a higher power, of something greater than myself. You know, I thought I had an understanding, but really what I had was confusion. And even if something did exist, it was probably not for me. You know, I don't know why I thought that, but whatever it may be. When I was able to read this part of the study, I thought, oh my gosh, this is me. And I recall that being a very hard process to go through with my sponsor. I wanted to combat it and be like, you know, what I don't, who's this, or what is this God? What does it look like? Like, is it the one with the robes, and is it this, or, and my sponsor, as patient as she is, just kept walking me through it, and you know, we kind of, it just reminds me of when I was even talking to, you know, outside help through a therapist, and I said, you know, how do you even pray? Like, am I talking to the trees? Am I, what am I doing? And so it was very uncomfortable. And it brought me back to a very vulnerable time of, my childhood, where we would go to, different churches, and I'm sitting here trying to understand the religion and what these people are talking about. And I couldn't grasp it. So anyway, learning, through what my sponsor told me, to just give it a try, um, you know, really get willing. I would come in and hit my knees in the middle of the living room, or in the shower or somewhere, and just say, "Hey, God, it's me. Don't know if you're there, but when I was willing to um, give it a shot, at least try. I think that's when things shifted for me. And then I get to develop a relationship, and the hole inside my soul, that dark spot of whatever it was that I was looking for, um, it started to be less and less and healed. And I get to continue developing my relationship with my God. And I never had that, ever. But I do today because of you all, this program, sponsorship, big book sponsorship. Um, and I hope I keep doing that. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Shana. Glad you were here. Okay, Toe Tap and Pickle.
Hi, everybody. I'm Trish. I'm an alcoholic. And the part that really jumped out at me tonight was really at the beginning of the reading. I didn't have a pro-offer temperance pledge, but I sure grew up with some good-natured contempt of some church folk in my family. And it wasn't just church folk, but it was anybody around. And always feeling like I then had to live up to and beyond that contempt, so I wouldn't be in that contempt or part of that contempt. And never feeling good enough. And figuring if I couldn't be good enough for my family, how could I ever be good enough for God? And then further down where it talked about the hands off of God. I don't remember exactly the phrase. I can't find it right now. But how God's there, but God's not really interacting directly with me. And the realization finally coming in here with that idea of I could have a God personal to me, and I could choose what my own conception of God was. I didn't have to rely on the God that I grew up with. I didn't have to rely on the God that others told me I had to rely on. But I was free to choose my own conception of God. And from there, I was able to grow into a relationship with God. Not just God being boss universal, but not wanting anything to do with me. Not just that God was the power of humans, God's power with humans affair was negligible, but God really wanted to be involved with me if I would have him, as it said, as Bill said, would I have it? Of course I would. But I had to be willing to search out that God of my understanding. And I had to be willing to put aside the prejudices that I grew up with. And put aside all the negativeness that I felt that I had grown up with in order to have that relationship with God and have that new world come into view that Bill talked about in that last sentence. Because without that understanding of God, of a loving God, not a judgmental God, not a hands off God, and certainly not a contemptful God. But once I could understand and believe that there was a loving God out there who wanted to help me, who wanted to be with me, who wanted to have a part of my life, that's where the life with the God of my understanding began. And that's where I was able to start feeling the love of other people too, not just the love of God, but the people around me. And I had to allow that love and that understanding into my life in order to be willing, as Shayna's one comment, do you believe you have the willingness that is required to be successful in this program? I had to find that relationship with my God in order to find that willingness. And without that willingness, I wouldn't be able to then take the rest of the steps and do the rest of the work needed to form that relationship with God. Thanks.
Thank you, Trish. Pinky, come on in.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamie. Alyssa, recovered alcoholic. So the main thing that I picked out of this reading is the willingness part. But before I get into that, I like how he pointed out that God had done for him when Abby was talking about that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. By me taking the 12 steps, having that complete psychic change, and putting into applying these on a daily basis, giving myself that daily reprieve. God does for me today what I can't do for myself. And that starts with turning my will over. And he even says it after that. His human will had failed. And my will fails me all the time. And I'm okay with that today because I can recognize where the hope is when I let God's will come in. And then, when he said to, like myself, he had committed or admitted complete defeat. I can remember when I admitted complete defeat over alcohol, and I keep that close to me because that's one of the driving forces that keeps me sober today, is that place that I don't want to go back to. And then the willingness, right? It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than ourselves. And then I saw that growth could start from that point. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Upon a foundation of complete willingness. We were just talking about this before the meeting started. Everybody wants to say it's the how of the program, it's the how of the program. Well, without the who, there is no how. So willingness has to come first. If I'm not willing, there's not going to be any honesty. There definitely isn't going to be any open-mindedness. And so, and I remember my first real spiritual experience, and that's when I discovered that it was the who of the program, not the how. And I was looking at a coin, and I was on the phone with another alcoholic, one of my trusted advisors, and it was just like, it isn't, because I can't do this without God. I mean, I could try, but there's not going to be any miracles. There's not going to be any freedom. Definitely not going to be happy, joyous, and free. And so it's the who. I have to have the willingness before I can get honest and open. So I'm so thankful for that, because that opened my eyes to just so much more. And I come into this room and I go into other rooms with just I'm trying to find the word, but I do have that willingness. But then it's accepting people exactly where they're at, and because that's being of maximum service to God and to those about me. And that judgmental person that I used to be, like I'd look in all the squares and be like, okay, I'm not going to talk to this one, or I don't have that today. I can come in because I can learn from each and every one of you. Exactly where each and every one of you are at. I just have to keep that open-minded and teachable, those tools with me. And so I'm thankful for that today, but I couldn't have got there without God. So with that, I'm going to pass the time. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, my friend. Glad you are here. And the barrister pickle, welcome, brother. Ah, with the little princess. You've got no audio, Xavier. You don't have any sound. There you go.
All right, and let me switch off Wi-Fi. 1 second. All right, is that a little better?
Yeah,
No?
you're good.
Oh, good. Okay. Xavier alcoholic. Recovered alcoholic. I really like the idea of the scales of pride and prejudice like falling from our eyes. I love that line. And I was saying I'm so grateful to be here. We're all sick with COVID at home, so we're all toughing it through. I love the whole concept of Bill's completely given up. He's essentially been told he's going to die of alcoholism. He's hopeless. His buddy shows up hopeless, and he sees that his buddy has something that seems impossible. And then his buddy just declares, like, I found God. I found religion. And I love how Bill goes through the thoughts in his head of all the biases he has and what his thoughts are and what they're not. And yet he's just like really definitive ideas of what higher power is and isn't. And then when he just lets it go and it starts to open his mind and has that realization, when you mix open-mindedness and that willingness to do things, that's really all that's required. And maybe this whole higher power thing isn't as complex as we need to make it out to be, at least for me. What I found is the more open-minded I can be, the more I can get access to that power that they talk about. Like, I love how Bill recognizes there's a power in his friend Abby that just simply didn't exist before. And by wanting that power then and thinking, okay, how do I get there? I found that, at least my journey in Alcoholics Anonymous is very similar. If I take actions, I'll get access to this power. And if I stop taking these actions, I'll lose access very quickly. And my ego will take over. Anyway, just want to quickly share my daughter would like me to get off now, so I'll pass. Thanks.
Well, she just wants to share too.
That's fair enough. She probably has much more intelligent things to say than I do.
Thoughts and prayers for you and the family, brother.
Thank you so much.
Come in.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
And if the missus wants to jump in later, by all means.
Oh, thank you very much. And
So,
I love the Packers. Throw it out there. Even though I'm in Minnesota, we're a Packer family for sure. So a lot of great minds on this meeting, I can tell.
Thank you, brother. So no hands up. I'm going to come in, and that'll bore you all to death and force you to raise your hands. So here's what I find very interesting. This is a point where Bill's seeing Ebby for the first time in years. Ebby's sober and bright-eyed. And Bill's sitting across the table drinking bathtub gin. And he struggles with God. And Ebby gives him an idea that melts that icy heart. And he came to believe. And here we sit here in this room tonight, sober, some of us many years, many decades, and oftentimes still struggle with the idea that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Bill wasn't sober, we are. And we study this. Bill didn't have this to study, we do. What's our breakdown in it? Bill trusted God at least began to trust the idea of God at that point. If I'm not trusting God in my life today, what am I missing in my walk in Alcoholics Anonymous? It's just a thought. Because here, he wasn't even sober yet, but he came to believe on step 2 in that last couple of comments. So, like Bill, I can so relate to all of this, you know. Being born and raised religiously, being forced to go to church, being forced to do things in Sunday school, being forced to go through the priesthood, being forced to do all of the things that were expected in my religion. And while Alcoholics Anonymous is not a program of religion and not a program of theology, it has great value that Bill talks about it in this book, because so many of us struggle with it. And it doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It just means that so oftentimes we're confused of what it's supposed to mean, because we've tried to live and see God in a box that somebody else has tried to give us and say, this is what God is supposed to look like. And this is what we're supposed to do within that box. And so we struggled with that. And I had so many of those prejudices. And as I got involved with some of the women that I got involved with along my journey, some of them had religion, some of them didn't have religion, some of them knew the truth and knew when the world was going to end. And guess what? It was way past the date when the world was supposed to end, right? So obviously their belief had got it wrong too. But that doesn't mean that there's no God. Just means man's idea of God or approach might be wrong. So what I can see in this chapter as well, and you hear me say it all the time, is I believe the chapter to the agnostics is one of the greatest pieces of literature written on this planet, and it gives us a pathway to letting go of old ideas and old beliefs and opening our hearts and minds to new ideas and new beliefs. But I see in this, as Bill goes through this conversation with Ebby, the foundation of where the chapter to the agnostics comes from. Because it comes not from some sort of knowledge that he read about and got somewhere else. It's coming from his own personal experience. And I think that's pretty cool. I think think that's pretty profound. He hasn't even gone into his fourth and final detox yet. He's about to do that in a few more days, but he definitely has come to believe through this conversation, because he sees a miracle in someone that was absolutely hopeless. And here's what I love: when finally Ebby became so, for lack of a better term, befuzzled, frustrated with Bill, whatever you want to call it, and not knowing how to help Bill, he came up with that idea of why don't you come up with your own conception of God? Isn't it wonderful, the freedom and responsibility that each one of us is given to not have a God that looks like somebody else's? And I honestly mean freedom and responsibility that we're given. That my God doesn't have to look like yours, yours doesn't have to look like mine, but something that will work for you. And I think when we can live with that idea, and we find that idea right here in this story, it actually makes, when we get to step 3 and make that decision, an easier thing for us to do. We might have a little more pain to hit before we get to that decision, but it still plants the seed. It doesn't say, step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. It doesn't say we did. It says we came to. And this story is part of coming to believe, if we look at it with an open mind. And I love that Alyssa pointed out about the willingness. And the willingness always has to come first. And the willingness is in the who. Absolutely. Elizabeth, welcome. So glad to have you with us. Come on in.
Thank you. My name's Elizabeth. I'm an alcoholic. The willingness. I was so scared to share tonight because it's a new group for me. But the willingness to surrender it all to God, like that's a daily battle for me. Just being willing to say, I can't do this by myself and I need someone else's help. And then also the realization that God is there and that he's helping me and that he's helping me through every step of this. And my sponsor, Alyssa, constantly reminds me of that. She's like, God is there. Talk to your God. Talk to him, her, it, whatever. And it's been really hard for me at going through the steps to just completely and fully surrender that my God is there and he's going to take care of this and he's going to support me and he's going to love me. And I don't know why it's been so hard for me. I don't know why I've been so obstinate about it. I don't know why I've been so reticent to listen to him. But I'm trying every day. I'm praying every day. I'm meditating every day. But it's a constant struggle for me. Every day I have to wake up in the morning and say, I surrender all of this to you and I need your help. And that's very humbling for me to admit that I need help, to admit that I need help from God, to admit that I need help from you guys. But it's been steadfast in me, in my recovery. So that's all I had to say, but thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here tonight, and I hope you will come back and join us. we are probably the one group that you never ever have to worry about sharing in or what you share, because you will be loved right where you are. And I, I, I like to use the phrase that we're just a bunch of God's kids trying to help a bunch of God's other kids. And we're a teaching group that all learns together. And that's a beautiful thing about being here. So please come back and join us. William, come on in, brother, and thank you so much for your service tonight. A double dipper.
My name is William Mark. Thank you so much for your service. And everybody else too, and we're reflecting, looking back at my life before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, in my life as I began to process the recovery part in this part of the program. And I was very confused about God. I had been brought up in a religious house, religious community, everything, and definitely what I seen people doing sort of put a lot of fear inside of me, and what they say God was about. So I had a lot of prejudice against God, but I still knew it was a God, but I didn't know how it was going to work in my life, and the communication was off too. I was more or less telling God what to do for me, whenever I needed. Most time I was asking for money. God, give me $50,000. Let me get myself out of debt and stuff like that. And it never happened. And today I know God knew better than I did, because I probably bought a liquor store and did my best possible and stuff like that. So as I began to say, somebody began to see me say. But one of the things that stood out for me tonight, and I heard it in the 12 and 12 Big Book, that it said, because I'm still learning and still seeing things. It said when I am concerned with God, I forgot how it went, but it was talk about something, me being concerned with God rather than when my concerns are with God concerned. That's what it was. When my concerns are with God concerned, that's what God wants me to do. And that's my way of saying it, And I remember reading it in the 12 and 12 when I was in the second chapter. When my will concur with God's will, it's better than anything I could ever want for myself. And that's been so true, And today I look at the world and I see what all going on, and in that little short statement, when I am concerned with God, God is concerned with me. That's mean that I'm living this program to the best of my abilities a day at a time. That's where I take it, Because why? Because I was selfish and self-centered. I was very selfish and self-centered. I didn't know that till y'all told me that, because I thought I was a good little William, and I did things for people, and I learned I did it for looking for something back every time I did it, So as I come in and clear things up, and definitely what really freed me, I guess the part was God of your understanding, And then I thought about that. I said, God is love, and all of that. God is love, because I could see over my life things that happened, could have happened, didn't happen, and stuff today. And I'm here today to talk about it. So definitely was the grace and the mercy that God had for me. But whenever I began to do what I learned to get me out of myself and self-centeredness, I began to, as Bill was saying that, I began to find the peace, the happiness that I couldn't buy. I couldn't find in the bottle. I couldn't find it in the bottle. So I'm grateful to be here and have that communication with God. Today I don't, I don't ask God for nothing, man. I get up and I say, thank you, because I know where my life came from, and I know where I stand at today. So I try to stay out of the way, even though I do play it. But if stuff come up, I just try to, okay, God, this is what you want me to do today. This is what I do. And that brings a whole lot of peace with me. Even sometimes when I don't want to do it, I get up and do it because I think it's better for me than what I want for myself. So the reading definitely continue to clear mind thinking of God, and I truly believe it is. And the other part, I'm going to say this before the other part. See, I was big on willpower too. And what he talked about, let me put my glasses on so I can see. What he was talking about, God had done for him what he could not do for himself. His human willpower had failed him. Now, a lot of good things that happened in my life, good things, as I say, but was no peace with those things, So I definitely identify with that part that God had did for him what he could not do for himself, So thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Glad you're here. Before we close out, Art, I would like to ask you to come in and join us on this if you would like. And by the way, you have great grandchildren here tonight. There's 5 generations in here tonight, and they're
Wonderful.
and there was like a total of 11 in the sponsorship family here for a while.
Right. My name is Art. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. And, the portion that we read tonight, as everyone has mentioned before, not everyone, but several have mentioned before, this is where Bill becomes convinced of the existence of a higher power, because he sees the evidence of it right in front of him. And I don't think I ever denied the existence of God, but I had become convinced that God had no interest in me, personally. And I had some experiences early in my life that convinced me of that, and that I just could never be good enough to satisfy the requirements. And the requirements, as I understood it at that time, was to follow the instructions from the church that I grew up in. And I've since come to understand that they weren't all wrong, but they got significant parts of it wrong. And so it took some convincing for me to come to the point of believing that God had an interest in my life. That last promise of the 9th step promises, where it says we suddenly realize God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. And Bill sees this here in the reading tonight when he talked about that it was obvious that something had taken place in Ebby's life, and a change had taken place due to something other than his own power, that he couldn't have done it on his own. And so he recognizes that perhaps, since I'm seeing this man who was actually condemned to life in the asylum, and here he is, bright-eyed and not drinking for 3 months. And he knew that couldn't have happened by himself. And he recognized at that point that he was at that same point of helplessness that his friend had been. And that perhaps he too would find some relief from this hopeless condition through a belief in something that he didn't understand. And so when Abby suggested that he determine or he pick his own conception of God, it gave him some hope. And what I've come to believe the past few years is that faith brings hope. And that's what happens in step 2. We get that little bit of faith, or at least become willing to have a little bit of faith. And that brings with it some hope for recovery. And when we get a little further along in the steps, we learn to trust that God that we have come to believe in and to put our faith in. And with trust comes peace. And so Bill talks about standing in the sunlight at last. And what he's really talking about is the sunlight of the Spirit. That he has seen a glimmer of hope for his condition. Although it's going to be several days and weeks before he actually has that bright light experience that we sometimes talk about. But at this point, he has that glimmer of hope that comes from believing in something outside of himself. And I have experienced that. I mean, I struggled for a long time with the idea of admitting to being powerless. I couldn't be powerless. That's not part of the script. Yet I finally had to come to the point at which I became willing to accept my own powerlessness. And along with that comes the idea that perhaps if this power exists, and I believe that it did, and if I could learn how to tap into that power, then perhaps it's not such a horrible thing that I have to admit to being powerless. And as I continue on through the steps, and I get to step 11, and it tells me I'm supposed to pray only for knowledge of His will and the power to carry it out. So having admitted in step 1 to being powerless, and then having gone through and taken the steps in between, step 11 tells me it's okay to pray for power. And I can expect that it will manifest itself in my life. So this is a very pivotal point in Bill's story, where he becomes willing to believe that there is a power greater than himself. And I think each one of us has to come to that point in our life where we have to concede that there's some kind of power in the universe that's doing for me something that I could not do for myself. For me, that happened when I was finally able to take the first step. But from that time on, I haven't had to take a drink. It's a miracle. I could not stop on my own. I tried. I was successful at one point for about 30 days. And I just gave up. This is my lot in life. I can't do anything about it. I've been through a series of experiences that I can only describe as divine intervention. I was finally able to surrender. Say, yeah, I can't do this. You take it. I haven't had to drink since then. That doesn't mean that I haven't made mistakes or made some foolish decisions or done some crazy things, but I haven't had to drink. And that's what this program is all about. So, thanks for calling me.
Thank you. Good to see you. Always a joy to have you, my friend. And hopefully we will see you tomorrow night. Shayna, are you able to close this out, or is Trish handling it? Shayna might be taking care of the little ones. Oh, there she is. Hi.
Or I'll defer to
I don't think we have it available in screen share. How about we pass it off to Trish?
Thank you.
Thank you for your service, sister. I love you.
I love you.
Give the kids hugs for me.
Thank you.
Hi, Papa loves you. Okay, Trish, you're up.
So from page 164, our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.
Thank you, Trish, and thank you for your service tonight as well. And we've got a real special way of closing out around here. We take a moment of silence for those who are still sick and suffering and who haven't made it here yet. And we virtually hold our hands together. And let's take a moment of silence for those who are sick and suffering and going to die of our disease tonight. And we're all here because somebody else prayed for us. And then if you will please join me in the Lord's Prayer. So here's your moment. Thank you so much. And who will take us from shame to grace if we let Him? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in the heavens. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever and ever.
Amen.
Keep coming back, folks. And you don't have to